Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars. SoundCartel. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. How has diversity and inclusion evolved from a moral issue to a business need? As the population grows and changes, how has inclusivity become an essential part of running our business? Hamid Senni has been a diversity and inclusion consultant for more than 20 years. He's watched diversity become a matter of necessity and helped to create a culture of authenticity. So how has the diversity landscape evolved? Hamid explains to Jeff Waters.
There was a couple of paradigm shifts. I remember when I started in 2005, we were literally trying to eradicate discrimination and exclusion from the workplace. Interestingly, at that time, I was working for the head of comms department, and we were running a lot of events. It was all about equal opportunities, and diversity and inclusion had a moral-centric approach. And we were asking ourselves, is the organization fair?
Well, that's how everybody thinks of it. Surely, when you hear of diversity and inclusion, it's a moral issue.
Back then, it was absolutely the case. But something really strange started to happen because to explain diversity and inclusion, our guest speaker will give lots of examples of discrimination and exclusion. And then we had colleagues who say, I haven't had a promotion for years since I'm working for that guy because when I had a child and he's misogynist, he's a sexist, I worked late with this colleague and I was sexually harassed. And a lot of stories started to emerge. And that started to really, really terrify the organization. So on one hand, we saw it as an opportunity for public relationship, for PR stunt. But then the organization started to be really worried for its reputation. And this is where the first paradigm shift happened. So I don't know if it's connected with the election of President Obama in 2008, but then I started to report to head of corporate social responsibilities. But all the work was being done with the legal team and some of the people from the HR department to make sure we had the right policies, the right training, and everyone had to do their unconscious bias training. The event were more about raising awareness, teaching people what was not acceptable behaviors in the workplace, because diversity was a risk that needed to be managed out.
So there was a moment when people started to say that inclusion wasn't good enough, that it was all about belonging. Can you tell me more about that shift?
Yeah. So what happened is that after we dealt with compliance, then people were like, where is the diversity of the workforce? So what happened is that all the racist joke, homophobic joke, all of that disappeared. But the diversity of the workplace didn't really shift. Then there was another paradigm shift where I started to report to head of human resources. And then it was all about who we attract, who we recruit, who we promote, the way we reward. I'm sure you've heard of the gender pay gap, and who we retain within the organization. And then a lot of organizations, they were like, okay, now we have more and more diversity in the workplace. We need to create inclusion. And this is where you started to have this connection with customers. But then some people said inclusion is not enough. It should be belonging. And that was a new paradigm shift. And people were getting confused. They were like, okay, I understand the compliance side. You can't just be sexually harassing your colleagues. That I understand. I understand the way we attract, we recruit, potentially we may be discriminating against people who are not like us. I understand if we have customers that are diverse and we fail to have this diversity within, we might not be answering the needs. But now you talk about belonging.
Yes, what do you mean?
So the way I explain it is for you to belong, you have to be your authentic self. But how can you be your authentic self in the workplace if the workplace is inauthentic? And how do you find out the workplace is authentic? You look at what they're doing around the environment, carbon footprint, all their sustainability project. Are they paying lip service or not? And if they are paying lip service, you're likely to be paying lip service around your own identity. So that might be who you are on the street with your friend, your family, and who you are at work.
That makes a lot of sense. So we haven't really gone into the benefits of all of this. Let's just touch on that. The companies that do have this belonging, are they at an advantage over others?
Normally, you should have a strong culture, a culture that is inviting innovation because everyone feels safe to speak up, feels safe to put forward their ideas. Because if your idea is rejected, it doesn't mean you are being humiliated. It just, this time it didn't work out, but next time you will be spot on. It's okay. The example I give is around inclusion and belonging is when I was working in London, the culture in London is after work, you go to the pub, you have a beer, and you hear all the office gossip because this is really where you have access to intel. But I don't drink alcohol. So ordering an orange juice in an English pub, everyone was cracking joke at me. And one day I've ordered a tonic. And people were like, oh, you had a gin and tonic? And I was like, yeah, it's a gin and tonic. And all of a sudden, the joke stopped. So I was pretending I was drinking alcohol. So was I included? Yes. Was I inauthentic? Totally. So it's the same, is unless you have this authentic culture where people are safe to be themselves, they will be safe to voice their opinion, their ideas. I will never forget, I don't know if that car made it here in Australia, is the Renault Versatis. That was the car that was supposed to be competing against BMW and Mercedes. If you're going to pay for a Renault car that is in the price range of a Mercedes and BMW, you go for the BMW and Mercedes because Renault is your cheap car for people who can't afford the next range. But the French thought that they could come up with a car under the Renault brand that will compete
Yes.
with the price of a BMW. And of course, it didn't work. Was there anyone in the workforce who said, guys, this is a basic marketing mistake? No, it wasn't safe. And they built the car with all the factories behind the car, all the advertising and everything. The car failed. And whoever was in those factories, those teams had to lose their job.
Very expensive mistake.
Indeed.
Mazars is an international audit, tax and advisory firm committed to helping clients confidently build and grow their businesses. Move forward with Mazars. Visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.
Over the years, the focus has shifted from both employees and the people culture department being responsible for diversity and inclusion to customers, bringing on board the leadership team. Are there any other stakeholders that impact diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, now people start to realize there is more than meets the eye. So, for example, most organizations think about the diversity of their employees and the diversity of their customers. But your customers are also part of certain communities that you serve or you don't serve. So now they're thinking about the diversity of communities. But also you have a supply chain, and that supply chain can be diverse or not diverse. So there is also the diversity of your suppliers. And then on top of that, you have the diversity of your offering. Are there people you forget to serve? So for example, you have this, I work for a big cosmetic organization, and when they did the audit of their biggest brand, they realized that this brand, this makeup brand, didn't have any product for Black people. That's a lot of people on the market you are not serving.
Absolutely. Now, you say that there are 5 layers of diversity and therefore 5 levels of inclusion an organisation needs to navigate. Now, if they get it right, does that mean they become one of the most inclusive organisations on the planet?
So that's interesting, because then if you are good with the diversity of your workforce, the diversity of your customers, your offering, your communities and your suppliers, yes, you get all the benefits of diversity and inclusion. But let's pause there. Let's say you are an oil and gas company, or you are a tobacco company. Now you've been good across all those 5 levels. You reap the benefits of diversity and inclusion, but because you're an oil and gas company, you have a bigger, faster, stronger negative impact on the planet. Or if you are a tobacco company, you just found a way to make teens addicted to nicotine via vaping. You don't want to use diversity and inclusion to have a bigger negative impact on the world. You want to use this diversity of thinking in order to solve the big problem we're dealing with. So that's why you need to move to the next 2 levels of inclusivity, which is sustainability, where you look at climate change, biodiversity, future generations, and ethics. Is actually your business model, is it inclusive? All the resources you're using to make your product, is it sustainable? Or because you have this high performance thanks to diversity, you sell lots of product, but because of that, in a handful of years, the Amazon will be completely gone because there are some rare resources out there that we need for your product. So that's the power of diversity and inclusion. You want to take it to level 6 for sustainability, level 7 for ethics, so you can have an inclusive business model. And that is the ultimate goal.
That's D&I and culture transformation consultant Hamid Senni. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.